I woke up to light pouring through my bedroom window at 4 in the morning, and my first confused thought was that I had slept through my alarm, and it was already noon. But my phone said 4:17 a.m., and the light kept getting brighter, and when I stumbled to the window and pulled back the curtains, I saw 2 suns hanging in the sky where there should have been only darkness and stars. The first sun was just beginning to rise in the east, a pale orange sliver cresting the horizon, like it did every morning, but the second one was directly overhead, blazing white and furious, and it was so bright that looking at it even for a second left purple spots dancing across my vision. I stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, my brain refusing to process what my eyes were clearly seeing, and then I heard the screaming start from somewhere down the street. It wasn't just one person, but many, a chorus of human terror that cut through the early morning silence like a knife through paper. I grabbed my phone and tried to call my sister, who lived 3 blocks away, but the call wouldn't connect, just dead air and a strange crackling sound that made my teeth hurt. The television was showing nothing but static on every channel except one, a local station where a news anchor sat alone at her desk with mascara running down her cheeks, speaking in a voice that kept breaking. She said scientists had no explanation, that the object had appeared approximately 11 minutes ago, that it was not a sun, but something else, something that was emitting radiation and spectrums they had never seen before. Behind her, through the studio window, I could see the parking lot, and the cars out there were starting to sag, their metal frames softening and drooping like candles left too close to a flame. I ran outside without thinking, without grabbing supplies or making a plan, just pure animal instinct driving me toward my sister's house because she was pregnant and alone, and I needed to know she was okay. The heat hit me immediately, not the gentle warmth of a summer morning, but something aggressive and wrong, like opening an oven door and feeling it reach for you. My neighbor's lawn ornaments were melting into colorful puddles, ceramic gnomes becoming abstract smears across the browning grass, and the plastic siding on his house was beginning to drip like thick syrup. 3 blocks had never felt so far, and by the time I reached the end of my street, I was already struggling to breathe, the air itself feeling thick and hostile in my lungs. A woman ran past me holding a baby wrapped in wet towels, her face blistered and raw, and she didn't even look at me as she passed, just kept running towards something or away from something. I couldn't tell which. A car sat abandoned in the middle of the road, its tires flat pools of black rubber, its windows cracked and clouded, and I didn't look inside because I could see the shape slumped over the steering wheel, and I knew I couldn't help. My sister's apartment building was still standing when I reached it, but the front door had warped in its frame and wouldn't open no matter how hard I pulled. I went around back and climbed the fire escape, the metal rungs uncomfortably hot, even through my shoes, and I found her window unlocked because she always forgot to lock it, that beautiful stupid habit that I had lectured her about 100 times. She was huddled in her bathtub with the shower running cold, and when she saw me climb through the window, she started crying so hard she couldn't speak. We stayed in that bathroom for 3 hours, listening to the world outside come apart, and the sounds were things I will never be able to forget, no matter how long I live. There was screaming at first, so much screaming, but that faded after a while into something worse, into silence broken only by the groaning of structures giving way, and the wet, slapping sounds of things falling and melting and collapsing. The water from the shower grew warmer and warmer, until it was barely cooler than the air, and we knew we couldn't stay here, knew that eventually this building would soften and sag and come down on top of us. I looked out the bathroom window and saw the city melting, actually melting, buildings slumping into themselves like tired old men sitting down for the last time. Glass flowed down the sides of skyscrapers in glittering waterfalls, and steel frameworks twisted and bent under their own weight, and everywhere there was movement, things running and crawling and dragging themselves away from the light that no one could escape. The second sun was still there, still blazing, and it seemed closer now, bigger, like it was falling toward us in slow motion. My sister grabbed my arm and pointed toward the horizon, toward the place where the normal sun had risen, and I saw something that made my heart lurch with desperate hope. There was darkness there, a shadow spreading across the landscape, and at first I thought it was smoke from the countless fires burning throughout the city, but then I realized it was actual shadow, actual shade, cast by something massive, moving between us and that furious white light. I didn't know what it was, and I didn't care. Shadow meant survival, at least for a few more minutes. We ran for it, ran toward that spreading darkness with everything we had, and my sister was 7 months pregnant and couldn't move fast, but she moved fast enough, driven by the same desperate instinct that had gotten me out of bed and across those 3 blocks. Other people were running too, converging from all directions toward that patch of shade, and I saw faces I recognized from the neighborhood, mixed with strangers I had never seen before, all of us united by the simple animal desire to not cook alive under that impossible sky. The shadow was being cast by a water tower, I realized as we got closer, a massive old steel structure that had somehow not yet begun to melt, and beneath it, maybe 50 people had already gathered, pressing together in the shade like survivors of a shipwreck clinging to debris. We pushed into the crowd, and I felt my sister's hand gripping mine so tight that her nails drew blood. And I didn't care, I just held on and watched the world beyond the shadow continue to liquefy and burn. Someone was praying loudly in Spanish, and someone else was screaming into a phone that clearly wasn't connecting. And a child was crying in that exhausted way children cry when they've been crying for too long and don't have the energy for real sobs anymore. The second sun blazed overhead, and I stared at it through the gaps in the water tower's framework, trying to understand what it was, where it had come from, what we had done to deserve this. But there was no understanding to be found, just light and heat and the slow apocalyptic melting of everything I had ever known. After about an hour in the shadow of the water tower, the structure above us began to groan, its supports starting to soften under the relentless assault of radiation and heat. People started screaming again, pushing against each other, looking for somewhere else to run, but there was nowhere else. Every other shadow had shrunk or disappeared. Every other shelter had collapsed or was in the process of collapsing. I held my sister and she held her belly, and we waited to die. And I thought about our parents who lived 2 states away and wondered if they were already gone or if they were huddled somewhere just like us. Then something changed in the quality of the light, something subtle at first, but then unmistakable. And when I looked up at that second sun, I saw that it was flickering. Not like a fire flickers, but like a light bulb with a bad connection, stuttering between full brightness and something slightly dimmer. The crowd around us fell silent, 50 people holding their breath at once, watching that impossible light source spasm and twitch in the sky. Someone whispered that maybe it was dying, maybe it was going away, and I wanted to believe that so badly I could taste it. The second sun flickered again, harder this time, and for one beautiful second it went completely dark, and in that second I saw stars behind it, actual stars in an actual night sky, and I understood that this thing was not a sun at all, but something else entirely. Then it blazed back to life, even brighter than before, and a wave of heat rolled over us that knocked people to the ground, and I felt my skin tighten and burn, felt my eyebrows singe, felt the hair on my arms curl and crisp. My sister screamed, and I covered her body with mine, trying to shield her, trying to protect the baby, even though I knew I couldn't protect anyone from this. When I opened my eyes again, expecting to be dead, I found that we were somehow still alive, still in the shadow of the water tower, but the tower itself had changed. It was melting now, definitely melting, streams of liquefied metal running down its supports like silver tears. We had minutes at best before it collapsed entirely, and I looked around frantically for any other option, any other shelter, anything at all that might buy us a few more seconds of existence. There was a storm drain nearby, its grate partially melted, but the hole beneath it still open, and I pulled my sister toward it, pushed her down into the darkness first, then followed after her into a space that was blissfully, miraculously cool. We crawled through pipes that human beings were never meant to crawl through, my sister whimpering with every movement, her belly scraping against the concrete, and I just kept pushing forward, kept following the flow of what little water remained in the system. We emerged eventually into a larger tunnel, some kind of maintenance access for the city's infrastructure, and down here the temperature was almost normal, the thick concrete and packed earth above us providing insulation against the hell happening on the surface. Other people had found their way down here too. I could hear them in the darkness, voices echoing off the curved walls, people calling out names and receiving no answers. I found a spot against the wall and helped my sister sit down, and we stayed there in the dark, listening to the muffled sounds of the world melting above our heads. Hours passed, maybe days. I lost track of time completely in that underground darkness. People came and went, some of them dying from injuries sustained during the initial chaos, others simply giving up and walking back toward the surface with blank expressions on their faces. Food was non-existent, and water was whatever trickled through the pipes, brown and foul-tasting, but wet enough to keep us alive. My sister started having contractions on what might have been the second day, and I held her hand and talked her through them, and I had never felt so helpless in my entire life. The baby came in the darkness, born into a world that was ending, and I caught her in my shaking hands and wiped her face with my shirt and listened to her first cry echo through those underground tunnels. Other survivors gathered around us, drawn by the sound of new life in a place where death had become the only certainty, and someone produced a bottle of water they had been hoarding, offered it so my sister could drink, and I learned in that moment that even at the end of everything, human beings are capable of incredible kindness. We named her Dawn, which felt either hopeful or ironic, depending on how you looked at it, and she was 3 days old when the light finally changed. I had climbed partway up a ladder to check on the surface, something I did every few hours, even though the heat drove me back every time, and this time I noticed that the shadows were longer than they had been, that the temperature was merely scorching rather than lethal. The second sun was still there, but it was smaller now, shrinking, retreating back to wherever it had come from. By the end of the week, it was gone entirely, leaving behind only the normal sun and a world that had been transformed beyond recognition. We emerged from underground into a landscape of melted buildings and fused concrete, of roads that had become glass and trees that had become charcoal, of silence so complete it felt like pressure against my eardrums. The sky was a strange brown color, and the air smelled like burning and chemicals. And everywhere I looked there were shapes that had once been cars or houses or people. My sister held Dawn against her chest, shielding the baby's eyes from the devastation, and we started walking in the direction where our parents' house had once stood, 2 states away, knowing we probably wouldn't make it, but needing to try anyway. Other survivors emerged from their own hiding places, from basements and caves and underground structures, blinking in the daylight like newborn creatures. And we began to gather together, to share what little we had, to start the impossible work of figuring out what came next. Nobody ever explained what that second sun was or where it came from or why it appeared and then disappeared. Scientists who survived the event studied the data for years and came up with theories ranging from quantum phenomena to divine intervention, but none of them really captured the horror of those days, the absolute certainty that the universe had suddenly become hostile in a way that no amount of preparation could address. Some people said it would come back eventually, that this was just the first of many, and those people built bunkers and hoarded supplies and prepared for an apocalypse that has not yet arrived. I don't know what the future holds, don't know if Dawn will grow up in a world that is healing or a world that is dying, don't know if that impossible light will return tomorrow or never. What I know is that we survived, that my sister and her daughter and I walked out of the melted ruins of our city and kept walking until we found other survivors, until we found something resembling safety, until we found the strength to start building something new from the ashes of everything we had lost. And every morning when I wake up, the first thing I do is look at the sky, count the suns, and pray that there is still only one.